There may be no greater story from the 2023 NFL Draft than Aiden O'Connell. At one point, he was a walk-on quarterback, was number 8 on the depth chart, and was never supposed to see the field for Purdue. Despite all the odds stacked against him, not only did he actually play for Purdue, but he became one of the best quarterbacks in school history, and now has a chance to be a starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming season. He's played really well in the preseason, and has garnered a ton of attention for his play. In today's video though, I want to talk about the insane story of Aiden O'Connell. We're going to talk about how he went from a walk-on to a potential future franchise quarterback, and how all this happened. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now, let's get started and talk about Aiden O'Connell. To start out today's video, we're going to use a quote. "I got discouraged the first couple of years, but I tried to keep a poker face about it. I really do believe in the saying, fake it until you make it, and I kept grinding away." Going back in time, growing up in Chicago, Aiden was always a leader, a good thrower, and had a knack for the game of football. But it was the third sport on his list. He loved baseball as he played center field, and then when he got to junior high, he thought basketball would be his ticket to playing at the college level. Once he arrived in high school though, the football bug got him. He said the lights and the excitement were a factor, and the fact that Stevenson won the 2014 Class AA state championship. He fell in love with the sport, and fun fact, as a kid, he was good friends with a wide receiver by the name of Charlie Jones, who would eventually join him at Purdue, and is a rookie receiver with the Cincinnati Bengals. O'Connell ended up going to Stevenson High School just north of Chicago, and worked with a quarterback guru by the name of Jeff Christensen. He'd become extremely important later, and would help Aiden become the best quarterback he could be. Among those trainer students were Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins. O'Connell began working with Christensen when he was only 13 years old, and the article that I'm reading in 2019 actually says that when comparing Aiden to Garoppolo, his trainer said this: "Garoppolo may be quicker on his feet than O'Connell and a better athlete, but as far as throwing the ball from A to B, Aiden is as good as Jimmy Garoppolo." It's unbelievably ironic considering the situation going on with the Raiders right now. Early on though, it was not easy for Aiden as he was stuck as a backup quarterback and was not getting his chance on the field. He was stuck on JV because the quarterback ahead of him was a kid named Jack Sorensen, who was a former Miami of Ohio player. Aiden was also a basketball star, as I said, and his teammate was former Indiana and Arkansas blue chip player Justin Smith. He didn't end up getting his chance to start until his senior year, but when he did play, he absolutely popped off. He threw for a school record 2,741 yards and 26 touchdowns, and was one of the best quarterbacks in the Chicago area. He was a legend, but that doesn't always mean you become a big-time recruit, especially as a quarterback who is a late riser, as most schools already have their guy. With an opportunity at a bigger school, with an opportunity to play college football, O'Connell committed to Wheaton College. They're a Division III program, which is located about 45 minutes away, and it also helped because his older brother Patrick, after playing at Ball State, was going to transfer there. O'Connell faced a huge decision coming out of high school. He could follow in the footsteps of his brother, or try and walk on at a Division I program, and see if he could hold his own against the country's best players. A few hundred miles away in West Lafayette, Indiana, new Purdue coach Jeff Brom was tipped off about how good O'Connell was, and said it was worth bringing him in as a walk-on. How did he convince Coach Brom? He said, quote, "When I was driving to the NFL Combine in the winter of 2017, I stopped by to see Jeff. I told him about Aiden, and I told Jeff to trust me. I said the kid could play, and when the ball leaves his fingertips, he's as good as Jimmy G." Coach Brom said, "You're serious?" And he said, "I'm dead serious." He also told Brom that O'Connell has that it factor that good players possess. Little did he know how accurate he would be, and Aiden also one day dreamed of being a head coach, so it made sense to try to go to a bigger program, and if it didn't work out after 2 to 3 years, he could come home and play for Wheaton after all. Brian Brom, Purdue's quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator at the time, decided it was worth a flyer, and Aiden would end up at Purdue. He was an unlisted recruit, and to many, had no chance of ever making it there. He decided to end up taking that risk and going to Purdue, and in 2017, he had no promises. He started the season as the 8th or 9th string quarterback, but then began to capture attention with his work ethic. He didn't see the field in 2017 or 2018, but his big opportunity would come during the 2019 season. Nick Sipe would retire before the season even started, Elijah Sindelar got hurt, and then Jack Plummer got hurt. This was unbelievable. In early November, Plummer would go down in the 4th quarter against Nebraska, and it was up to the 8th string walk-on to save the day. With the Boilermakers trailing 27-24, he completed 6 of 7 passes for 62 yards, and eventually, David Bell scored a game-winning touchdown. The comeback was complete, and O'Connell said, quote, "That day, my life changed." The following week, he lived out his childhood dream by making his first career start against Northwestern, and they beat the Wildcats 24-22. He had dozens of family and friends there to watch, and he passed for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns in his first start. It was believed to be the first walk-on quarterback to ever start in Purdue history, and this was a huge deal. I remember personally at the time as a Purdue fan thinking that O'Connell had that it factor, and I wanted him to play over Plummer. After that, he'd throw 2 touchdowns in a loss to Wisconsin, and then had a big-time game against Indiana. While the Boilers lost in double OT to the Hoosiers, O'Connell threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. This proved that he was legit, and many were hoping he'd be the guy going into 2020. He'd end up starting their first game against Iowa, throwing for 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. They'd end up winning that game, and after nearly 700 more yards and 4 touchdowns in his next 2 games, O'Connell was off to a great start in 2020. Sadly, AOC would hurt his elbow and would miss the remainder of the season. He'd end up finishing with 916 yards, with 7 touchdowns and 2 picks in just 3 games. O'Connell obviously had all the talent in the world, but going into 2021, there was a quarterback battle. He'd battle it out with Jack Plummer, and this time, Jack would actually come out on top. But eventually, Plummer would struggle and left for Cal, and now Aiden would take over just a couple of games into the 2021 season and rise to the top of college football. His first big moment came against Iowa, as on the road against the number 2 Hawkeyes, O'Connell threw for 375 yards with 2 touchdowns and another rushing score on the ground, as they upset the Hawkeyes 24-7 and pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the year. After that, he threw 3 interceptions in a struggle game against Wisconsin before he'd finish on an insane note. He helped them beat Nebraska, number 3 Michigan State, torched Ohio State's defense, helped them beat Northwestern, and then helped them beat Indiana. In those last 5 games, O'Connell averaged 372 yards per game with 18 touchdowns and not a single interception. It also included a 536-yard performance against Michigan State and 423 yards against Northwestern. Despite just starting 9 games, O'Connell was named a second-team All-Big Ten selection after passing for 3,712 yards with 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. While he did have 3 picks in their Music City Bowl win against Tennessee, he got better and better at taking care of the ball. He also had over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in that win against the Volunteers, and if that was O'Connell's last game, he probably would have been drafted. He would have a huge decision to make. Would he go pro, or would he come back? He said, quote, "I heard from different people that I could have been drafted after last season, but that it would have been better for me to have more film. So the idea of coming back and playing another year seemed like the right thing to do." 2022 was an interesting season. He threw for 365 yards and a touchdown in their Week 1 loss to Penn State, and then torched both Indiana State and Syracuse before he'd get injured. Luckily, Purdue would survive against FAU, but O'Connell was on and off throughout the rest of the year. He threw 2 picks without a touchdown against Minnesota, then had 4 touchdowns against Nebraska, then threw 3 interceptions in a loss to Wisconsin, mightily struggled against Iowa, and then turned it on for Illinois. With their win over the Illini, Northwestern, and Indiana, the Boilers would clinch a spot in the Big Ten Championship, but it was not all sunshine and rainbows. Unfortunately, we found out that Aiden O'Connell's older brother had passed away, and this became evident right around the last weekend. It was unbelievably sad, and many were wondering if he'd play in that Big Ten Championship game. He would end up playing against Michigan, and while Purdue hung around in the first half, it honestly wasn't that close. He finished his career with 2 interceptions, but it was a huge deal because he even played. Aiden ended up starting 33 total games for Purdue, and in that time, he became the school's all-time leader in completion percentage, passing efficiency, and 500-plus yard games. He's top 5 in nearly every category, and is definitely the best quarterback in recent memory for them. With him being out of eligibility, he declared for the 2023 NFL Draft and was always projected to be a late-round pick. Derek Carr had been the Raiders' quarterback for the past 9 years, but now, with his number 4 jersey being up for grabs, the young rookie would get it. He ended up getting drafted in the 4th round with the 135th overall pick, and the Raiders were happy to have him. O'Connell wasn't drafted to be Carr's immediate replacement, as the Raiders did sign Jimmy Garoppolo, but right now there is seemingly a real quarterback battle between the two of them. O'Connell has an incredible mix of accuracy, mental toughness, and poise, and a great football IQ. He may not be the most athletic guy in the world, but he has that it factor and can make those throws. With Garoppolo having a lot of injury problems and his recent performance in the preseason, many are wondering if he's the future franchise quarterback of the Raiders. He threw for 141 yards on 15 of 18 passing for 1 score against the Niners, and this sent everyone into a complete firestorm. O'Connell could be the real deal, but ultimately, if he fails, he'll just go back to his original plan. He said he wants to coach one day, and I'm sure he could probably make that happen now. It's crazy that at one point he was a walk-on in 9th on the depth chart and just wanted to get there for experience. Instead, it turned into a record-breaking career, getting drafted, and now a potential long NFL tenure. The rise of Aiden O'Connell has been absolutely insane and awesome to watch, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But what do you guys think? If you're a fan of the Raiders, what do you think of Aiden O'Connell? If you're a Purdue fan, what do you think of Aiden O'Connell? And what rookie or quarterback should I take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.